Welcome to A Beginner's Guide to Modding The Witcher 2. In this series of videos I'm going to show you the very basics of modding The Witcher 2, installing some of the more simple and fairly well-known mods, as well as a few of the slightly more complicated ones. I am not going to cover everything, but hopefully by the time I finish you will have a basic understanding of how to install most of the mods that you'll come across. You should bear in mind that I am a newcomer to modding Witcher 2, and as such in many ways I'm still a beginner myself, so bear that in mind. I am actually a mod maker for games such as Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas and Skyrim, and I have plenty of tutorials on how to mod those games, but this is my first entry into modding The Witcher 2. So, keep that in mind, and if you actually find an error, a mistake, feel free to tell me and I will try to fix it. Now, before we get started, I have to say this video series is aimed at people who have got little to no experience modding their game and may be a little nervous about attempting it. And as such, I am going to be covering some very basic details that some of you probably already know. If you are hoping for a very fast, quick guide to modding, I'm afraid that this is not going to be it. I am going to be covering a lot of little details, and I'm going to be going reasonably slowly. This is aimed at people who are, totally new to this, so bear that in mind. Having said that, there are some basic requirements, some things you're going to need to do, and some knowledge you're going to need to have. The first thing you're going to need to have is a program that allows you to extract archives. So something like WinRAR or 7-zip. I prefer WinZip myself, but whatever works for you. If you don't have such a program, stop right now, go off and find a program such as WinRAR or 7-zip, learn how to use it and what it does. It's going to be essential for this particular series. The second thing you're going to need is an account on the Nexus mods. Now, you can get mods in a variety of different places, but I am going to be using the Nexus fairly exclusively in this series. It's a place I'm comfortable with, and so if you want to follow the steps, it's best if you have an account there. Do not worry if you haven't got an account. It's very easy to sign up and it is free. You will be given an option to pay if you want premium membership, which comes with some advantages, but it is free. You can select the free option. And finally, you are going to require knowledge about your game's installation folder. You are going to need to know two things. The first is what I call the game folder. That is where you will find The Witcher's launcher. It will have a file called launcher.exe. Don't worry if you don't see the .exe. If you just see launcher, that just means your operating system is hiding known extensions. That is fine. For me, I found my game in my Steam Apps Common The Witcher 2. If you have the Steam version of this game, you will probably find it in the same place. So find your Steam folder, Steam Apps, Common, The Witcher 2. For many of you, the drive will be the C drive, and it will probably be under Program Files. As a general rule, little side note, I recommend against that in future. If you reinstall your machine sometime, try to move your games to a separate folder or, if possible, a separate drive. The Program Files folder has some extra little security things that can interfere when modding later on. It's not the end of the world if you have it installed there. We can get around it, but just be aware of that. If you have a non-Steam version, if there is one, I'm not totally sure, you'll have to figure out where you installed it yourself. But that is important. You're going to need to know where this folder is because you're going to spend quite a lot of time there. The second thing you will need to know is where your cooked PC folder is. This is fairly obviously a little easier. It is within the game folder. most of your time modding will be spent inside the cooked PC folder. These are the files you will be replacing and changing when modding your game. So those are the two things you're going to need to know. You're going to need to know the location of those two folders. With that in mind, I'm going to show you how to install a fairly basic, fairly simple mod so you get a feel for how you do things. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to choose a mod called 2 talents per level. It is a mod that just basically gives you 2 talents per level, making the game a little easier. It is not the sort of mod I would use myself, but it has all of the requirements for this little demonstration. The first thing you should do when considering using a mod is read the description. Read what it does, whether it's got compatibility issues, are there any special requirements, warnings, and so on, and spend a little time reading the instructions on how to install. Now, this mod is fairly simple to install, which is why I picked it, but you should still read the instructions. The first thing to do, of course, is go along to the file section and download. Click the download manually link and then choose your location if needed, or it'll automatically download for you. Mine has downloaded to my desktop, which is where I generally do most of my modding work. And as you can see, there it is. It is a 7Z file. The next thing to do is to extract this file to a folder. And I'm going to right click. And I have all of these options. If you've installed WinRAR or 7-zip, you should have options to extract. I always choose the one that extracts to and gives a name, and that name happens to be identical to the file. That's generally a good thing to do in modding, so I'm going to select that and let it do its job. And I'm just going to move that there for now. So take a quick look inside here and you will see a file called basescripts.dzip. Now this is a mod that replaces an existing file. Some of them add new files, but this one is replacing an existing file. Now this file, because I've not got any mods installed, is called a vanilla file. We call it a vanilla file. It means a file that has not been modified. So this is the modded file, this is the vanilla file. And it is recommended that if you are installing a mod this way, you should back up your vanilla file. So go along, right click and select copy or Control C, and then click anywhere and paste, and you'll get base scripts copy. Now, I would actually, generally speaking, prefer another folder somewhere. So I'm going to make a folder called backup, and I'm going to move this file into the backups and then rename it. So that is a copy of my vanilla. This is, maybe I should actually call that vanilla backup. So that is the backup files. Don't worry about this folder being here. The game will ignore it. The game will totally ignore it. If you want to store it somewhere else, you can. I now copy this and paste it into here. And as you can see, it's going to copy and replace the file. And that's it. That is this mod installed. Next time I level up, I will gain 2 talents instead of 1. And if I want to uninstall it, I just go along to the same file, delete it, go back to my vanilla backup. I'm going to cut this, go back up to cooked PC and paste it here. I'm now back to the vanilla game. I have installed and uninstalled the mod. So that was fairly easy, and most mods are going to be installed like that. It may not always be one file. For example, I have just downloaded a mod called Better Texture Environment, and if I open that one up, you will see it has a lot of folders, and in each folder you will find several other folders with textures, and as you can see, probably hundreds, possibly thousands of replacement files. And whilst installing this mod is pretty much the same process, just it takes a little longer for the files to transfer, it's the uninstallation that becomes more problematic. You have to remember or go back and find out which files you transferred in. You have to make sure that any of the files it has got here are not replacing files here. In this particular mod, they're not. They're all new files, but in plenty of other mods, they will replace files. You will need to find the vanilla backups you made and restore them. And as you can imagine, the more mods you start to use, the more likely you are to either forget where you've put them or to have it take such a long time. If you're going to be trying mods out, perhaps uninstalling them if you don't like them, changing them occasionally, this is not necessarily the best way to mod your game. In general, when modding a game like this, I always like to use a tool called a mod manager. Now, the one I'm going to use for this video is the Nexus Mod Manager. You can find it on the Nexus page, and it will actually manage your mods for several games. I have a video devoted to the Nexus Mod Manager, which I will link to here, and it is a little out of date, but it does contain a lot of useful information. The most important thing is the installation is pretty easy, and you should be able to install it without any trouble. The first time you run the game, what will actually happen is you will get this kind of scan which will try to detect all of the games that you have. Now, I'm only going to use The Witcher 2. I'm not going to have it manage any of my other games. You can let it manage whatever you want. I'm simply going to say, no, do not manage those games. Just manage Witcher 2 and then click OK. You may have to change some of the options, but it should actually detect everything pretty much right out of the box. It should find the correct mod directory, the cooked PC directory, and where you want the mods and install info is completely up to you. Again, if you want more details, go and check that other video out. And to show you how easy it is to install a mod with a mod manager and some of the advantages, I'm going to add mod from file, and I'm going to add the 2 talents per level mod. Well, there it is. And activate. It is now telling me that this file already exists. Do I want to overwrite with the one from this mod? Now the answer is yes. I could either do yes for this one file or yes to everything, any files this mod finds. You know, usually I would do yes to mod if it was overwriting a mod, but it's not overwriting a mod. It's overwriting a vanilla file. So I'm just going to say yes. It has now overwritten the base scripts.dzip file. I now have a modded game. To deactivate this, I simply select it again and hit the deactivate button. And you may have seen the date modified change on this, but you'll see that the base script is back. This is the vanilla base script. Watch again when I activate. You can just see the timestamp there. I can do yes. And it's changed. It's now got the modded file. Deactivate, and it goes back to the vanilla file. It remembers, it stores a backup copy of this file for you, so you do not need to remember this at all. This is one of the major strengths of a mod manager. So when you uninstall a mod, it will restore what was there before. And another advantage that you get now is if you download another mod that changes a similar file or the same file, you get a warning. I'm going to show you what I mean by installing a mod called maximum level 70, not 35. This is obviously a mod that increases the maximum level Geralt can go to. I'm going to go to files, and I'm going to download manually. As a general rule, I actually always download manually for Witcher 2 mods, and this is because sometimes, even when there's a button that says download with manager, which I will show you, there can be some issues if the mod author has not packed the file correctly, and not all Witcher 2 mods are packed correctly. So generally speaking, I download manually. And once it's downloaded manually, I just take a peek inside and check that it's all set up correctly. Now, it looks good. What happens is everything that's here will be put inside the cooked PC folder. If you see a folder called cooked PC in here, that's okay too. Nexus Mod Manager is pretty clever. It will go in and try and figure out which files should go where, i.e. it will go into the cooked PC folder and move all of those in. However, in this particular case, it's completely simple. Base scripts, dzip, and some ability files, some XMLs, which will be going into, well, that will actually create a new folder. I also checked the install notes, and it just says, to install, copy the contents of the RAR file into the cooked PC folder. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, so I don't need to actually change anything there. That's going to work perfectly. I just go along to the Nexus Mod Manager and add mod from file, and select the 70 levels file. I then activate it. Now watch what happens. It has detected that this file, the base scripts dzip, has already been installed by 2 talents per level. I'm getting a warning that this is going to overwrite that mod. And I can tell you in this case, what it will mean is it will delete the entire mod basically. Because that mod was only 1 file, it will delete the entire mod. Now, that is actually better than some alternatives, because if a mod has more than 1 file and you replace one of its files with another mod's, the results can be unpredictable. Whereas in this particular case, if I do yes to mod, it will actually overwrite this file, and I now have 70 levels 674 installed. You can also see I've now got the abilities folder, which has got those XML in. If I deactivate that, it goes back, this base script has gone back to this one. As a general rule, if you do activate and you get this warning and you didn't know or you didn't expect it, you might want to do no to all, when it's finished, deactivate, because what that'll have done is only install the files that don't overwrite. Then go off and find out from the mod author what you should do if you want both of these working. In this particular case, it's really either or, so it would probably be better to just deactivate that one and activate this one. And now it's saying it's going to overwrite it, but it's not saying it's overwriting a mod, it's overwriting the base games file, the vanilla files. So, yes to all. So, as you can see, this is a much safer way of installing your mods. You get a lot more control, you get warnings as to whether or not you're overwriting important files, and you don't have to constantly remember every single file that you've installed. Remember to remove all of these. The Mod Manager does it for you. And finally, I would just like to mention the download with NMM option that you get at Nexus Mods. If you are using the Mod Manager, one of the cool things is you can actually hit download with manager and the mod will start downloading straight into the Mod Manager. No need to add it, which is really nice. It's a very nice feature. However, with Witcher 2, be careful. Make sure that the mod is able to be installed with Nexus Mod Manager, because that's not always the case. Now, I've downloaded the Quick Slot Potion file as well. I downloaded it manually so that I can look inside, and it has a cooked PC folder. That pretty much tells me that was okay. I can actually install it via Nexus Mod Manager. The README probably tells me installation. Place cooked PC folder in the main directory of Witcher 2, which is the exact same thing as saying copy everything that's inside cooked PC into your game's cooked PC. The only difference is it will ask you to overwrite the folder as well. you can actually do that. It does not delete the contents of the folder. So in actual fact, this mod works fine with Nexus Mod Manager. I can download it that way and then just activate it, and it is now working. But just be aware, not every mod that is packaged for Witcher 2 is packaged in a way where that is possible. And in fact, most mods don't even have that button available, which as a general rule is probably good for us. I prefer downloading manually and looking inside and making sure it's a simple case of copy all of these files into the cooked PC folder. And if it is, then you can use Nexus Mod Manager directly. Okay guys, that is about it for this video. You should now understand the very basics of modding Witcher 2. You should understand the folder structure and generally how you install some of the simpler mods. In part 2, I'm going to show you installing a mod that's slightly more difficult, not much, but slightly more difficult. A mod called Dynamic HUD, which has a few extra steps. That should be a pretty short video. And part 3, hopefully, I'm going to be showing you how to install more complicated mods that require, well, they require using a special tool where you're going to need to unpack and pack the dzip files yourself. But I will cover that in part 3. If you are interested in those, I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, remember, as always, have fun.